everyone, and welcome to the My Ray of Sunshine podcast. My name is Mayra, and I'm here to help you receive the advice you deserve. Now, if you all are here, it's probably because you want to know exactly how to help support the LGBTQ plus community, and that is why I have Mike here with me today. So, welcome, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, so happy that you're here. Now, tell us a little bit about who you are and what your podcast is all about.
I'm a podcaster. Been doing my podcast since February. I go by the name of Mike Brooklyn, and the podcast is called the Real Talk Podcast. So basically, every week, I'll do 1 to 2 episodes. It'll be on various different topics. Sometimes I do hit on the LGBTQ community topics because I am openly a man that is transamorous.
Okay.
Um, I do have friends from the community that are transgender or identify as gay or bisexual, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, sometimes we'll do different topics. Like I've done a couple episodes where me and another person will go over cold cases, which I don't know if you've heard, but so far this year we've had like 37 trans people that have been murdered.
Wow.
So I've done a couple episodes where I covered some old cases that have not been looked at in years. So we would actually go over what happened in the situation and then kind of go over like, if anybody knows anything, like how they can get in touch with authorities to kind of let them know what happened. But we've also had episodes where we discuss everything from like sports to comedy,
Mhm.
a little bit of true crime here and there.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
it could be anything, but if people check it out, they can see exactly what it's all about.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're helping spread awareness, and especially since it hits so close to home, it just shows how passionate you are about it and how you're also helping support the community as well and helping people, you know, like release the stigma and all the misconceptions they may have about it. So I'm so happy that you're bringing that to light with your podcast.
All right, thank you.
Not a problem. So, what advice can you give others to help try to understand and support the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, people got to realize that we're all human. You know what I mean? So just
Yeah.
because somebody identifies with a certain gender or identifies with a certain sexuality, that doesn't negate who they are as a person.
Mhm.
So it's like just because you may have grown up not having access to those kind of individuals doesn't mean you have to let any kind of stigma that you may have heard, whether it be from friends or television,
Mhm.
let that let that affect your judgment. Like instead, you should just focus on who that person's character is, and then determine from there whether or not that's a person you want to be around.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to be open minded. I'm glad that now it's becoming more common that more and more people are coming out, even at younger ages, which I find really, really incredible, since that's not something that older generations are used to. And I think that that's what helps it to become normalized. And that's what is helping more and more people, like, I mean, I'd say in a way feel accepted, but then at the same time, there's other people that aren't so accepting of the community, which is awful. So just being openly like discussing about this can really help, just share the love.
Yeah, well, with the older generations, I'm actually glad you brought that up though, because it's not that it's something they're necessarily not used to.
Mhm.
It's just that the older generations always had more of the people that would force people of the LGBTQ community, I guess you could say, into the closet, so to speak, like like
Mm.
that kind of terminology.
Mhm.
Because back in the day, if I don't know if anybody's seen the movie like Paris is Burning, but that was a documentary that came out in the early '90s, but it was filmed in the late '80s.
Okay.
You had a drag queen named Dorian Corey that explained the story of what they call passable, which in the trans community, passable just means you have gone so far in your transition that
Mhm.
some people can't tell that you were born a certain gender. Um,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, she was going over the fact that the ones that are able to go out and then come back home in one piece with no blood are the ones that would be deemed passable because nobody clocked who they were.
Right.
But yeah, but like the old school, the older generation, their thing is like, they've been so used to like, not seeing people of the LGBTQ community that they know of
Mhm.
because they would force the people of the LGBTQ community to not be open. Where
Mhm.
ones that were open and were able to get home in one piece, they were the ones that survived. you know,
Right, right.
that's how the old school was. Whereas nowadays, it's more like, you could be in high school and you could have a best friend that is gay or bisexual or transgender or lesbian, however you want to call it.
Mhm.
So, that's the difference between then and now. Like, not saying that there's no obstacles that people have to overcome because there still are. Obviously, there's still people being murdered over it. It's
Mhm.
just that compared to the days of old, people aren't so forced into a closeted position.
Yeah, wow. I didn't even think of it like that. And it's when you put it that way, it really gets you thinking about like the community as a whole and just like how much time has changed and how much like hopefully we're continuing to progress, but it's sad when people, in a sense are like forced to not be themselves and like now hopefully people like feel like they can be and embrace themselves fully with that. But
Well, technically, Hollywood is kind of being forced into trying to stop the stereotypes that they for so long put out there.
mhm.
Like you got shows like Pose now. You have a movie that's called Saturday Church.
Mhm.
All these different movies and shows that are coming out now. Even the show like Queer as Folk, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like or Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. Like all that stuff is like kind of pushing forward, saying like, okay, it's not a shame to be LGBTQ. It's actually something that should be celebrated.
Right.
So with shows like that and movies like that, it kind of puts a, a good spotlight on the LGBTQ community as opposed to just being like another show that advertises the transgender prostitute or the
Mhm.
gay guy that's trying to seduce a straight guy, stuff like that, because
Yeah.
that's not what the community is all about.
Right, right. It's like falsely putting them that way, and then people who see the show or who watch the movie, they think that's how it is, and it's like, oh, like that community is not good. But then, you just have to really, really get to know the person and realize, like, oh, I just had that false belief, and whatever that show or movie was portraying is not the case, for every human being. So it's important for us to be, open-minded and give people chances at the same time.
Exactly.
And why is it so important to understand the concept of love is love from a humanity standpoint?
Well, well, because pretty much it's like this, like nobody tells the straight guy not to flirt with the straight girl. You know what I mean? Like that's
Mhm.
just basic knowledge. Like a man is gonna go flirt with a woman, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
But they're so quick to judge something when it comes to like say a man hanging out and being romantic with another man or
Mhm.
a woman doing the same thing or like a man being in a relationship with a trans woman. It's like, just like that straight man has a crush on the straight woman,
Mhm.
like I would have a crush on like a trans woman, or I would have a crush on a cis woman, or, you know, a guy would have a crush on another guy, or a woman would have a crush on another woman. It's just that is who they are attracted to.
Mhm.
Your attraction does not determine your personality. Like, like for example, my personality could be I love joking around, right?
Mhm.
You could have a straight dude that loves joking around. You could have a straight woman that loves joking around. So it's like we're all human at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, so to just judge us on who we are attracted to in a romantic way,
Mhm.
should not determine who we're able to love. you know,
Yeah.
that's it.
Exactly.
Okay, so at the end of the day, if you love somebody, let that person love somebody. Don't judge them for it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's really hard sometimes to like be able to tell what people's sexuality is because
Mhm.
people judge about appearance all the time and then they automatically assume like you're heterosexual and that you're attracted to the opposite sex, but in reality like that's not the case and it's not even like trying to pinpoint okay, she seems like she would be a lesbian, like it's just like it's just like targeting things that like are false beliefs and accusations whereas like people I feel like are so close-minded when it comes to that and they just think, okay, if I like men, everyone's going to like men. Like everyone every woman or everyone who's like me is going to feel the same way when in reality that's not the case at all. And people love who they love and I think that it's so powerful to be able to express your love with someone no matter the gender, no matter anything else. And I think that like getting rid of like that stigma is really important too because I mean I just feel that like I love the quote like love is love and it doesn't matter who it is as long as like the feeling at the end of the day like everyone feels a certain love for someone else and let them love who they love. It's not hurting anyone, it's not impacting anyone around them, so it shouldn't really change their way of viewing that.
Well, the root of the problem is a thing called toxic masculinity.
Mhm.
So basically, what that means is like the whole belief system of the patriarchy in which a man shall lay with woman, stuff like that, and that you must be the tough guy, like boys don't cry type stuff.
Mhm.
And that's where a lot of it comes from because I mean everybody sees the TV and they portray the gay guy as always being like this ultra feminine type of man and everything like that. And that's why they're like, hey, boys don't cry, chin up, stick your chest out, stuff like that. And
Mhm.
then they're shocked when they see a gay guy and they run into one and they're like, oh wait, but he's so masculine, how can he be gay? And it's like, yo, like just because he is in a relationship with a man doesn't mean
Mm.
that he's not going to be a masculine person. That's just his traits.
Right, right. Yeah, and it doesn't define anything. It's just,
Yeah,
how he is and again with the false beliefs and the jumping to conclusions the moment like people say like, "Oh, yes, I'm gay," or this and that, like they think like, "Oh, well, I wouldn't have guessed," or things like that that, is automatically already having like a negative connotation with like who they are because then they start feeling like different and they start feeling like is this is being gay wrong, is being a lesbian wrong, like having all those thoughts in your head about like how people are actually viewing you can really actually be the cause of like a lot of people not to come out because of
yeah,
fear of like whether they're going to be accepted or not, especially by family.
yeah. And that's a bad thing about toxic masculinity is the fact that there's a lot of people out there, whether you're a man or a woman, whatever, you're afraid to come out because you're afraid that you're going to be seen a certain way. So it's like
Mhm.
you have guys that we call like DL culture, which means down low, that will go out, they'll have sex with either a trans woman or they'll have sex with a man or whatever the case may be, whatever their attraction is.
Mhm.
And, they go out, they do it, and then at the end of it, they go back into hiding into who they were, whether they're married to a woman or, they're hanging out on the corner with their friends and, and like never telling anybody what their true desires are. So they
Mhm.
suppress it. And then a lot of times, if you suppress something like that for so long and you just keep hiding yourself from even within yourself, you end up causing violence, which is why we have 37 trans women that have been murdered this year so far,
Wow.
because of the fact that these men, they hide who they truly are and they can't handle
Wow, that's so awful. That's
it. But the root of it comes from that toxic masculinity because they're taught, like, be a man, be a man, be a, that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. It's like they grow up with that and they almost in a sense might feel guilty for not necessarily being as masculine as they, their parents would want them to be. Like it's kind of like difficult for them to truly be themselves when they're having like the reputation and like it's just like false beliefs as well with how people are going to react and the violence. I can't believe like the violence is so big with the LGBTQ plus community because it's really sad. It's sad that you can't just like express who you are and then have everyone be okay with that and welcoming as you'd hope.
Exactly. And that's the thing that why, like, on certain podcasts that I do, I
Hmm.
try to hit on some of these topics because the last thing we want is more violence. The violence needs to stop. Period.
Yeah, that I couldn't agree more because I mean at the end of the day we're all human and we can't be thinking that like um it should only be a man and a woman, who dates a woman. And that should not be considered the right thing to do. And I know that a lot of the times it's religion is attached to that too with
Yeah,
those beliefs and it's hard, but I mean in today's society like it should be more open and our lives have progressed so much and like I just think that we should all continue growing in that aspect and not keep like having those negative beliefs or like just false assumptions as a whole that is like hurting the community that could be amazing, if we just all accepted rather than um targeting and targeting them and bullying them and that turning into violence later on in their lives, which is completely awful.
yeah, which is why you'll notice around the country, like a lot of times, the bigger cities tend to become like safe havens for the LGBTQ community because those are the places within the country that have been ahead of the time as far as like the community goes.
Yeah, wow. And it's really sad that they can only like find like, a safe space, like a very, very small safe space versus like, just feeling comfortable to step out of their home each and every day and hope that they wouldn't be judged for it.
Yeah, like New York City, San Francisco, Atlanta now have become like the big hubs for the LGBTQ community as far as like where a lot of people travel to live, you
Mhm.
know, for safe reasons. But even in a place like Atlanta, if you're in the city, it's pretty safe for the LGBTQ community. But once you travel outside of Atlanta, it gets into those suburban or rural areas to where now, okay, it's not safe.
Wow.
Yeah, so even there, it's like you gotta be careful.
Mhm. That's such a shame. That really is such a shame that like, you have to focus on those small areas to
Mhm.
feel like yourself and not have to worry about, your well-being. And it's just really sad, but I'm glad that we're talking about this because it's like bringing things to light and you're even teaching me a lot that I didn't even know. And I think that having these conversations will definitely, help shed the light and help people really, really think twice before judging someone from the community because I mean it's hurting them and um like it's little things that we didn't would never even think about.
Well, I mean, the way things change, the way you start change is by talking about it. Because
Hmm.
the more the conversation gets out there, the more people realize, okay, yeah, there is something that needs to be done.
Exactly. Now, I know you touched a little bit about the misconceptions, as far as like the male dominance, if the male is gay, but what are some other common misconceptions like for gays, bisexuals, lesbians, like even queer people that um, we perhaps may not even know?
Well, the biggest misconception with the straight community is that just because a guy comes out as being gay, automatically they think, in their minds, they're like, oh, I could be with gay people as long as they don't hit on me, stuff like that. And it's like, yo, like, relax. Just because a dude might tell you he's gay
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're his type.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, like, most of the time, a gay guy can tell when someone's straight. you know, and
Yeah.
and and the majority of them are not into straight people because think about it, they want to find a dude that is into them.
Mhm.
So it's like, the last thing they want to do is try to, hit on a straight guy, because they already know, okay, yeah, that guy is straight. He's not with us, stuff like that. Not with us like the community, but like not into being in a relationship with a person that is of the gay community.
Right,
Um,
right.
so that's one thing that straight people kind of need to get over. like,
Yeah, yeah, like, "Oh, they probably like me." Yeah.
yeah. Also, straight guys that always try to go after lesbians, like lesbians are lesbians,
Yeah.
they, 9 out of 10 times they're only into women. I mean, you might find a lesbian occasionally that might be somewhat into men,
Mhm.
but most of the time she's considered bisexual.
Mhm. Right, right.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, like, trying. I've heard about it for so long, like even going back to the '90s. Like you'll hear about that guy that says, "Oh, I only go to lesbian bars and stuff like that." Because he thinks that like there's a straight woman hiding out there, so she doesn't have to get hit on by men.
Oh my
yeah,
goodness. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and they think, oh, I could turn a lesbian, blah blah. It's like, nah.
Yeah. It's that's not how it works.
No.
Not at all.
But those are common misconceptions that like straight guys tend to have.
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, that that actually makes me mad when people think that, like, you can change someone's sexuality just because, you're too masculine and you could, like, sweet talk them and it's not the case at all, and it's a lot of people also think that, like, being gay, being a lesbian or bisexual, like, they think that's a choice, like, "You know what? I'm gonna wake up today and I'm gonna be gay today." And it's not it's not it's true, It's like things that, like, you you feel early on, and then you're still trying to figure out, like, when you're growing up, you start questioning things like, I'm not attracted to women as, I thought I should be, or I'm just attracted to men. And that's something that, like, you notice early on, but then so many people, like, just suppress it. They continue suppressing it, and yeah, it's so frustrating when, I hear that people are told, like, "Oh, like, it's a choice," or, "It's just a phase that you're going through that you'll get over," and it's not the case at all.
And I'll keep it all the way real. Like, I mean, I was always told like the formative years of a person is during their teenage years. And I could be honest, that's absolutely true. Like, your teenage years is where you really start to figure out kind of like who you are, what direction you're going
Mhm.
in. And the first time I ever found myself attracted to a trans woman, I was a teenager. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't even know what the situation was at the time. Like,
Right.
I was walking down the street. I saw a woman, and I was like, "Whoa, like she's gorgeous."
Mhm.
And my friend turned to me, he's like, "Oh, that's one of those trans people." Of course, he used a word that I don't want to use,
Right.
but that's what he said. And then, I kind of, because you're a teenager, you kind of just whatever, you keep going on about your business.
Mhm.
Later on in life, I started to notice, like, okay, yeah, I'm attracted to both women and trans women, and then
Mhm.
eventually, once you get to a certain age, you're just like, oh, whatever, this is who I am.
Right, right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to come to that acceptance part and to feel yourself and to really like you said in your teenage years, like you noticed that and you felt that attraction and then that still didn't stop you, that still didn't like keep you from, trying to discover that side of you. And
What? Well, it's like as a teenager, you're kind of caught up in your own bullshit anyway.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, so that's why I'm saying like I may not have acted upon my attraction at that point,
Mhm.
but it was something in the back of my mind that I kind of knew was there.
Right, right. And that's all that matters, like being able to tune back into the truth
Yeah,
and your feelings and just going with them at whatever point in your life as long as it's not continuously being suppressed
yeah.
over time. And how can people reach a level of understanding and respect when it comes to being accepting of the LGBTQ plus community?
Um, Ultimately, they just gotta get past the indoctrination that they've been given since they were kids, because that's the best way I could put it is indoctrination.
Mhm.
Like because you're indoctrinated from when you're younger into like having preconceived notions of a certain community.
Mhm.
That's kind of the same way with racism. Like with
Mhm.
racism in those rural areas of America,
Mhm.
they're put up only around whites with whites, and then before you know it, they go out into the real world and they're like, "Oh, black people exist,"
Mhm.
like that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So it's like the same thing with the LGBTQ community. Like if you grow up and you're indoctrinated that gay people are this or gay people are that or lesbians or transgender or whatever, is all this negative stereotypes. Then when you get out into the real world and you actually meet somebody of that community, you're gonna kind of already have a preconceived notion of what they're about, and it might not be true.
Mm, mhm.
So it's like you really gotta get past all that,
Yeah.
and then be able to have an open mind into meeting new people.
Right, because your open mind and your willingness to still get to know them regardless of things that you've heard in the past, things that you've been brainwashed thinking. Um,
Mhm.
like it's important to just be the bigger person and to actually give them a chance and like not push them aside just because it's something that you're not used to or something that you're not sure of or that you don't want to get involved with. Like it's you know, I feel that it's something that like an opportunity, if anything, to just get more educated, and just be more welcoming. And I mean, we're all human, so
Yeah.
it shouldn't be that hard.
It shouldn't be, but unfortunately, the society that we live in sometimes, depending on where you are, it's definitely a difficult task.
Yeah, I can imagine. Um, and why do you think it is so difficult for others to come out in today's society? Like, could it be the violence attached to it and the negative stigma?
Um, Wait, you mean coming out or for people to accept other people?
Um, I mean, like, more so coming out, like, let's say, like, someone who's been suppressing themselves of being who they really are just because, you know,
Yeah,
today's
that's a good question, but violence can be like a small part of it because they hear about the violence and everything like that. But I think a lot of it has to do with one, the way people are raised, because sometimes parents don't realize the pressure that they put on children as far as like their sexuality and everything like that.
Mhm.
But also religion. And when I say religion, I'm not just talking about Christianity because that's what people always focus on. They focus on the Old Testament that was I want to say misconstrued or mistranslated
Mhm.
because a lot of people tend to focus on that part of the Old Testament where it's like, oh, Sodom and Gomorrah and all that other stuff, which to be honest with you, all that in was originally written in like Aramaic and ancient Hebrew, which modern Hebrew does not translate well with.
Right, right.
Yeah, so like they like a lot of people don't realize that that was all mistranslated and misconstrued. But you also have other religions like Scientology, what's called Islam, that have certain views that they show toward the LGBTQ community, which are not necessarily in the best of light.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of times, what that will do is that will create an unnecessary fear and cause a person to suppress of who they are.
Mhm.
And the more, like I said, a person suppresses who they are, the more negative outlet, their outlet will be in the future.
Yeah.
Because the longer you wait to accept yourself,
Mhm.
more negative that's going to be within your own self.
Right, right. And you're in a sense like keeping yourself from being truly, truly happy.
Yeah,
And that's the most important part, like that's people's mission to be happy in their own lives and to be doing what they want to do and also to be with the person that they actually love. And if they're with someone who isn't that person or, like someone that they're really, really attracted to, then it's just robbing yourself of your own happiness and keeping yourself from attaining what you could actually have.
yeah, and being unhappy leads to depression, which is not good. And at the same time, look at how many people have probably gone through 2 or 3 marriages before they realize, you know what, I'm gay or I'm transamorous or I'm lesbian or I'm bisexual, whatever, and they've gone through those marriages because those marriages never worked because they were never open and honest with the person that they were with because they weren't being open and honest with themselves.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, and it was just a vicious cycle. Like they were trying to be someone who they weren't,
Mhm.
thinking that hopefully, they could just forget about their true feelings and they're basically not really prioritizing themselves and their needs. And instead, they're just hoping that, it works out in their marriage when, like years later, you realize, wait a second, like, why did I do this? I could have lived a much happier life sooner and, actually with someone who I want to be with. So,
Yeah, and one thing, it affects them, but it also affects the other person that they had brought into the situation by being married to that person. Or let's say they have a kid together. Now the kid is going to grow up without their parents together because one parent just wasn't able to be open and honest.
and it's something as simple as that, just being open and honest and just like, I feel like you first have to love yourself and accept yourself for who you are before getting in any relationship, and that's, like, the very first step that you have to do because if you aren't accepting of yourself, then you can't expect someone else to accept you because it's not the right person, like, it has to, like, align. It has to perfectly align, and a lot of the times, like, people just think that they'll just forget about it, you know, or they might even think that it's not even worth the hassle of like living their lives um like with being judged or like having that the negative misconceptions or like all those fears like you mentioned too can really really keep them from actually expressing who they are. And I think that um like you mentioned too, religion can have a lot to do with it, and it's just it's like a whole variety and just the way we're all brought up, and we all have these beliefs because we have families, and that can really instill a lot of fears and just uncertainty of what they can really do in the future.
Yep, I completely agree.
And what would you tell someone who may be listening right now and who is too afraid to come out to their friends and family?
um, to somebody who may be transamorous, because I could really just speak from like the transamorous position, but if you are attracted to trans women, be open and honest about that from the get go, because if you are not, it can definitely lead a person down the wrong path. Like for example, if you
Mhm.
are going to be with someone, like if you're telling this trans woman that, oh, she's beautiful, she's this or she's that, and then all of a sudden, she sees you the next day and you're with your friend and you're just ignoring her, like, she probably thought, oh, this is a person I could be with.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, it turns out that you were just telling her one thing to her, but then in front of other people, you're quiet.
Mm.
That's not, that's leading her on, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, but also to come out to your friends and your family. I mean, to be honest with you, like if you come out to your friends and your friends can't accept you, that was never your friend to begin with.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
that person was just hanging out with you.
Mhm.
And your family, family is a tricky thing because you got some family where they'll be accepting, and then you got other family that will shun you.
Mhm.
Like I remember the one that I was kind of nervous about admitting my attraction to, like, as far as being attracted to trans women, was one of my cousins. Because, he's kind of more the masculine, like kind of like the guy that like, he's like, yo, go to the bar, hit on the women, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, I was like, I don't know if he'll really be accepting or whatever, but it turned out he didn't care. He was like,
Well,
cool.
that's good. You had me on edge there. I was like, "What happened?"
Yeah, so it's like, you're gonna have the people that might surprise you. You
Mhm.
know, like they might surprise you and be cool with it. So that's what I'm saying. You can't always judge,
Mhm.
whether or not this family member or this friend is gonna accept you.
Right.
So you really just gotta kind of like put it out there, and if they still fuck with you, they fuck with you. If they don't, they don't.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like that you said that if you come out to your friends and they judge you or they make fun of you, or they're not really accepting you, like that's not a true friend because that just shows that they just, cared about what they thought about you when in reality they're not loving you for who you are and who you've always been. And I think that having supportive friends is can be really hard to find for a lot of people, especially depending in age. Like it's harder as you grow up, and I would only hope that people can like support a friend who has recently come out, or who is perhaps too shy to like share that with you. But I think that it's all about the trust and being open and transparent and having that difficult conversation. And they may surprise you. And as far as like with family, it stinks because I always tell people like if their friends aren't supportive, like just drop them, but like with family, that's not the case. You can't really drop a
Actually,
family member.
family member, I would say, is like this. Like, you have family gives you unconditional love.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like that's family, unconditional love. Like no matter what, if you are doing good in life or you're doing bad in life, they still care about you.
Mhm.
But a relative, just a person who's a relative, is conditional love. Like
Mm.
that's a person you probably see at holidays, and then you don't hear from them the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a relative, conditional love never lasts. It will always fade. But
Mhm.
a family member, a person who rocks with you, no matter what the deal is,
Mhm.
that's a person that will show you unconditional love and be there for you. So that's the thing. When you do come out to your family, that's something that you're gonna I mean, you can't. I'm not saying you could ever be prepared for it, but it's something that you're gonna face. You're gonna see who the relatives are and who the family is. So you
Mhm.
stay with the family, you X out the relatives.
Mhm. I like the way you put that. The conditional and unconditional, like I never thought of it like that, but it's true because your immediate family should always have that unconditional love for you. And, your cousin, can sometimes judge, but like I think that as long as you feel some sort of support with the support system that you may have, which could include friends or family members or a combination of the two, like that would be, the ideal situation in that case.
Well, you also got to understand, like the mother and father could always end up being the relatives. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, sometimes it might be the cousin or the uncle that will be the family member because they're gonna love you
Mhm.
no matter what. Whereas you got people, and if you ever talk to somebody within the trans community, they'll be the first ones to tell you, like, they were kicked out at X and X age because their mother or their father was just like, oh, this is not gonna go down in my house.
Well.
So they would end up like, for example, New York City. We have a place called the Piers, which is down in like the village area, right?
Mhm.
And for a long time, that's always been an area where you would see gay and trans youth just homeless out at the piers right there because their families had kicked them out for them being trans or them being gay and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, that's why I say like sometimes you never know, your mom and your dad might end up being the relative, but
Yeah.
you might have that cousin that might be like, look, either way you're still my family, stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah. It must be really hard for people to, come out and hope for the best and then find that, their parents aren't supportive and it's like, I'm showing you myself. I'm being open with you. I'm having this conversation with you and you not accepting me can really be such a scary and awful thing to go through.
Yeah.
And I think that like, hopefully it can mend with time. Like if that's the case and they're not accepting, like hopefully like with time they'll start to like feel more comfortable in a sense because sometimes it's just something that they have to really just snap out of and accept the reality that it's not a phase, it's not like that they chose it, like it's not a choice, like it's who they are. And if you love your kids, you would hope that they can be
Well,
accepting of that.
this is also why you have these big cities that have become hubs for a lot of the LGBTQ community. Because think about it, let's say it is a kid growing up in, say, rural Alabama, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rural Alabama, we all know is old school, homophobia, racism, stuff like that.
Right.
So let's say that kid comes out and tells their parents, like, hey, I'm transgender, whatever, this is how I identify. And then all of a sudden, they're like, no, no, not my house, you better get the fuck out. Closest place they could go where they know they're probably not going to be attacked or something like that would probably be Atlanta, because
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta would be like what, like 2, 3 hours away. So
Right.
they end up hopping the bus. They're over in Atlanta. If it's somebody in, say, like Pennsylvania or New Jersey, best place they could possibly go is New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about it is like a lot of these cities now are becoming very expensive places to live. And there's a lot of people that are homeless due to situations just like that. So it's like, it's aside from just families needing to learn how to accept their kids, I mean, the city's got to learn how to make it more affordable for people that don't have much because of the situations that they come from to be able to actually live and actually make a living for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
to where they don't have to hustle on the streets and everything like that. Because, I mean, let's face it, any city you go to, you're going to find that kid that doesn't have two nickels to rub together, but he's trying to sell you some kind of weed or some kind of coke or something like that, just
Mm-hmm.
to make a living, and then
Right.
you also have some people that might try to hustle in the sex trade. And the sex trade, as we know, can lead to a lot of bad things like diseases, drug addiction. I mean, and I'm not saying all sex workers go through that, but there are sex workers that have been known to actually catch diseases and to actually catch drug addictions as well.
Wow. Yeah. That's so sad that like, they would have to go out of their way to like in a sense, in a way start their own life and in a more welcoming place. And it's really really sad, but like you mentioned, it could be because like they just don't have much and they just want to feel accepted and they don't want to be judged for who they're attracted to, so that's could be their easiest bet. But it's really unfortunate that that's the case, that that's how their mind works and that's how, you know like they just think of escaping versus hoping that it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think people can start to even like bring up a conversation, like to like actually come out and tell someone openly like their sexuality?
Well, that's different for everyone. um, the way I ended up doing it
Mhm,
with my cousin that my cousin that was accepting.
mhm,
Um, literally, like I just got to the point where like I kind of had enough of some of like the homophobic remarks that he would make from time to time.
yeah,
Especially regarding like trans women, because I think we were talking about like the trans bathroom issue, like like whether or not trans women should be able to use like the
mhm.
women's restroom or something like that.
Oh, okay.
It was some kind of combo like that, and I just kind of was like, look, dude, like I'm attracted to trans women, like like that's you know part of my sexuality. Like I love cis women, but I love trans women as well. I was
Mhm.
just kind of open and honest with him about it, and he was like, "Oh, okay." you,
Yeah.
so it was kind of like a nonchalant conversation,
Mhm,
but it's just like you kind of gotta put it to somebody in that kind of light, like
mhm,
you don't want to make it too much of like a harsh situation, but at the same time, you don't want it to be too loose either to where it could just be rubbed off, like just, oh, that's whatever, and then they ignore you,
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, but if it's like family, like your mother or your father or something like that, the best way to probably do it is to kind of like just say, hey, mom, dad, um, I need to talk to you real quick. Can we have a conversation?
Yeah.
Because a mother and father is always going to be a different story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be different when you tell your parents versus a best friend.
Mhm.
So it's always going to be a little bit more scary, but, hopefully that's, like, what, like, helps you feel like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders in a sense, like, after you share whatever you needed to share, and I think that it's important, and even though it's scary, like, it shouldn't be anything that, you keep delaying because you're so afraid. It's just having those important conversations, like, talking things out can really help, and it can help them at least try to understand you a little bit better.
Yep.
Yeah, because I can't even imagine, like, the worry, the fear, everything attached to that, and,
I
just
mean,
hoping for the best for that.
the fear is real. Like you, like it's never easy considering the fact that so many people, including parents, have you know spread so much like homophobia, transphobia, stuff like that.
Mhm.
It's really systematic in the way like it goes generation to generation.
Right. And a lot of the times people or parents don't even know that they're expressing themselves like that, and that's why they don't understand, like, why their child isn't, actually telling them how who they really are, who they're attracted to. Like, it's just like a lot of evaluating, like, the language that you use, or the way you speak about someone, um, a part of the LGBTQ community, because it can really influence whether they will trust you to enough to open up to you about it.
Exactly.
And what is the biggest takeaway you hope someone from the LGBTQ plus community learns from you in this episode?
Just the fact that like trans amorous men, we are definitely with the community. Because sometimes within the community we can have our own disagreements in a way.
Mhm.
Um, like for example, sometimes they'll confuse a trans amorous man with what's called a chaser. A chaser is really somebody that is kind of DL, which means down low.
Mhm.
Um, but they only go for trans women for their trans experience. Um, like it doesn't matter if you're transgender, transvestite, drag queen, cross dresser, or whatever. They try to have sexual relations with those people just because they fall in line with the trans community. It's not
Mhm.
about who they are personally.
Oh.
So
Wow.
so the chaser is really just going over that person. Is just going kind of like a notch in the belt, trying to like, get them just because they're with the trans community.
Mhm.
And whereas a trans amorous man is a man that actually has love for the trans women.
Mhm.
So when they go to be with a trans woman, they're not just going for the sexual experience. They're going because they're pursuing a relationship.
Wow.
Yeah.
That
Um,
that's crazy that, like, they would actually target them and go after them without even wanting a serious thing, you know?
yeah.
That
But that's the way the so-called chasers are, because it kind like chaser comes from the term trans chaser.
mm.
RuPaul actually had a parody song that she did called, Tranny Chaser.
Oh.
Like I said, I don't like using that word, but
Mhm.
like RuPaul actually made a song about that. But the term chaser has been, I feel like, thrown around very loosely over the years,
Mhm.
to the point where like it kind of overshadows like what a real trans amorous person is.
Wow. And that's unfortunate because, I mean, you would hope that that's not how they view it, like, and I mean, like, for someone like you who actually would love to have a relationship with them because you care and you want to get to know them, and it's not just like the physical thing, like, it's sad. It's sad
Yeah,
that, like, it can kind of in a sense put those who are transgender, like, have them put their walls up because they don't know your intentions, and
mm,
they don't know whether you're a chaser or not.
yeah. And,
So
and that's the thing within the community, the entire LGBTQ community. Like sometimes we end up do kind of having like a wall up in a way, because it's like, like, okay, like, does this person mean the community harm, or do they actually genuinely want to be around?
mhm.
So it's kind of like a way where it's like trying to keep as many people out without being without being like too, how can I say, like, without being too close minded. you know
Right, right, yeah.
yeah, it's like, so I mean, you got to kind of just be mindful of like how even within the community we're approaching each other. Like we got to kind of be like, okay, we're all different, but we're all still flying that same flag.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's hard to see people's intentions as well. So I see why, like, you would be having your guard up in that sense, or wanting to keep your, like, circle small, where it's like, okay, these are the people I trust, these are the people that, I know, we're all a part of this community, like, no one here is, being fake about it, or has bad intentions
Yeah,
about us being ourselves, and that's what, a lot of people should also be aware of, is just having that support and that acceptance and coming to that point.
exactly.
Um, Now, where can people turn to when needing to feel support and a whole lot of love?
I mean, it depends on what your circle is,
Yeah.
like like I mean, for support, like, I mean, you do have Facebook groups out there that have support groups within that
Mhm.
target, like, that are for certain uh groups. Like for example, the trans amorous people, like we have our groups where it's like, such and such tribe, like Men Like Us tribe, trans people and the allies who support them, stuff like that.
Mhm.
um you can just type in LGBTQ support, and I'm sure you'll get a whole list of groups that pop up.
Yeah.
But also, depending on whatever city you're in, there might be actual physical groups that meet up and have meetings. But of course, with Rona out here and
Yeah.
everything, they're probably shut down.
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, so yeah, so for right now, like Facebook groups and stuff like that, that might be the best way to go about like finding some kind of support, whether it be mental, emotional, or whatever.
Yeah, I'm amazed by Facebook groups because there really is a group for everything, and I love that it's kind of a community within a community. Like, you can see what you want, and just join certain groups that you feel comfortable with, and you can learn. so much, and it's helpful to be able to connect with people, because even if that's your first step, is like networking with people and getting comfortable with the idea of expressing yourself because those people are cheering you on, like that perhaps is the best thing you can do for now. And until you're ready to have those conversations, like with your family, with your friends, and actually pursuing who you're actually attracted to, and um, having the ability to still be yourself and get comfortable with that idea. So I
Oh yeah,
think,
man. Well, yeah, with those groups, they do have people who tell their stories about how they did come out to like their families and stuff like that.
oh, that's so nice. Yeah, because in a way, it does make you feel less alone.
Yeah,
And I know that, like, especially with the pandemic going on, it's harder to see people, but like having a connection with someone on social media can really make that difference, where it's like, wow, yeah, I met this really cool person in like California or something.
yeah,
And so it's really important to be able to want to network and put yourself out there for the better, the betterness of yourself, like healing yourself and the whole process of just growing and developing how you really want.
exactly. Yeah.
Now, Mike, where can everyone find you?
Everybody could find me on Twitter at Mike Brooklyn. I also have my podcast, the Real Talk Podcast. It's on Spotify, Radio Public, pretty much almost anywhere that you can find podcasts. So it's literally called the Real Talk Podcast. I also just recently opened up my own, like, I guess you could say like merchandise, like Real Talk
Oh,
Podcast.
cool. That's
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah, it's on T Public, TEE Public, and it's called, and like the podcast is called Real Talk Podcast. The clothing line is like Real Talk Designs
That's
with a Z at
awesome.
the end. Yeah, with a Z at the end of designs. So like I
Oh,
saw.
okay.
This way everybody knows Transgender Awareness Week. Just keep in
Yeah.
mind, 37 have been murdered this year, and that needs to come to an end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important to just continue spreading the love and being more open-minded and more welcoming and learning,
Yep.
because you can never stop learning from people. And I love when I hear like coming out stories, and I love when they can tell me, like who they really are and expressing their love with their partner. Like, I don't care who they're attracted to at the end of the day, because it's like I just love hearing the story. So I'm really glad that you came on my podcast
Thank you.
to talk about this, and I think that it's so important to help other people understand the LGBTQ plus community. And hopefully someone comes out today when the episode comes out, and
No
they feel
doubt.
more open about it.
Yep. I do appreciate you having me on though.
Yes, of course. Thank you again. So, everyone, I really hope this podcast made you smile at least once. Stay tuned for more advice and positivity next Friday. As always, it's Myra. I hope you guys have such a beautiful day and also were able to take something really incredible away from this episode. I really, really hope that you guys can be more welcoming and just continue learning and never be afraid to express yourself. Bye.